an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Son of a Trickster, chapters 34, 35, 36, and 37. In these chapters, you're a witch, and you're a witch, and she's a witch. Everybody's a witch. Also, the one person in his life that could do something to help him turns her back and leaves. Mostly, everything is terrible. Also, he almost gets chewed to death by river otters. Shockingly, not the worst thing to happen to him in this chapter. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Oh my God, you guys. So, there is so much going on, and a lot of it I still don't really understand. But, last episode, we ended with Nana writing to him, "I'm coming." As soon as he mentions river otters, that's it. She's on a plane. It's all set. Jared, rather than responding with relief as I expected, is in truth thinking a little bit more clearly than I am, because he is immediately afraid that she's going to mention him coming to live with her. And since he's sort of waffling on whether he wants to do that anymore or not, he has not said anything about it to his mother, and he knows that this woman is going to blurt it out, and then his mother is just going to get violent the way that she do. Oh, I'm sorry. And you know what? I want to say thank you to Robin for commissioning this. Robin, I was so excited about talking about this that I didn't even give you credit because I just wanted to start talking about it. Forgive me. Yeah. I didn't really think about that when she said she was coming, and I probably should have, but I was just more concerned about his well-being rather than his mother freaking out and what she was going to do, which I know indirectly does involve his well-being, but, parsing that. So he's trying to talk to his mom to see if she's even going to be home, hoping that maybe she won't be. Spoiler alert, she will be. And he's sort of thinking to himself, maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe she'll be fine. And then immediately telling himself, she's not going to be fine. Stop it. So he sits down and tells her that Nana is coming. I thought he was going to tell her about going to live with her, but he does not. He only tells his mom that she is heading over, and she wants to know why, of course. First, she's like, "I can't believe that you're still talking to that side of the family." And he's like, "Oh my God, knock it off. I am so sick of cutting people out of my life just because you have a problem with them." And she sort of just sidesteps that and is like, "Well, what the fuck is going on?" And he says, "It's going to sound really crazy." And she's like, "Lol, yeah, okay, go ahead and tell me." And he says, "I asked her about river otters and she booked a plane." And she says, "What happened? Stay with me. Don't zone, okay? Use your words, Jared. I'm not a mind reader. Did you see someone you loved? Someone you thought was dead or far away?" "Baby came back," he said, "but it wasn't baby." "No, it really wasn't," his mom said. "Does Nana know about this? Did you tell Nana?" Jared shook his head. "And Sarah, but she wasn't Sarah. She looked like Sarah, but she didn't act like her." Fuck. She flopped on the couch and covered her eyes with her hands. Fuck. "Am I crazy?" Jared said. "You're boning a witch," his mom said. "Excuse me? What?" And then he says, "You think Sarah's a witch?" And she says, "The freak has juice. So does her gran, but the old broad's too much of a holy roller to use it." – He says, "Witches aren't real." And she says, Jared, you're knee deep in witches. You are neighbors with one. You are boning her granddaughter. You are sitting beside one right fucking now. Oh, okay. Excuse me? Again, I say, excuse me? She just drops this shit like it's just inconceivable to her that he has not already figured this out. Bitch, why would he have, though? What are you talking about? Are you... This is just so unexpected. If you had asked me about the number of people in these books that I was going to think had like connections to spirits or deities of some kind, or, you know, had magical powers, I would have been like, well, obviously Mrs. Jax and the old lady who picked him up in the car. That would be it. Apparently, it's pretty much everybody except for fucking Richie. Like, even his Nana comes in and starts to fucking turn bird-like in front of his face because she's getting so angry. Whoa. This is rad. I'm, like, here for it, to be honest. I really like, at first, I was like, everybody? This feels like a little bit much. And then I started to be like, nah, never mind. I love it. I love it. Especially because everybody seems to be aware of it, except for Sarah. And they are all frustrated by the fact that he has been so slow in catching on, which I find kind of amusing because they all just seem, if anything, they just seem vaguely irritated with him. You know, it's just kind of funny. So he asks, is Nana a witch? A halite, his mom said. A hell what? A high chief lady medicine woman. A what? She's a look down your nose at the commoners, borrowing her power from the cannibal and giving herself airs about it, halite. She's nobility and secret society. She's bad fucking news. Cannibal? What cannibal? Nana doesn't know any cannibals. How far is your head up your ass? His mom shouted at him. You were invited to her last potlatch. She has a big name. She deals with the ogre. Ogre? There's cannibals and ogres? Holy crap, I need a drink. You are unfucking believable. Mom, will you just tell him what's going on? I also need to know. Holy shit, how can you just be this, like, angry and not follow it up immediately with, here's an explanation of what's going on? You don't get to talk about how she gets her power from the cannibal and that she deals with the ogre and not have, and, like, this is your child. You have to be aware that he has not been taught any of this, right? Come on, lady, what are you even talking about? Listen. I'm very frustrated with her. And he says that she should have just told him that she was a witch. And she tells him that she tried to teach him protection spells. But he was too obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine to pay attention. Now listen. When she tells him about this, she also says he was 5 years old. I'm sorry. Your attempt to teach a 5-year-old magic didn't work, so you just gave up on teaching him anything at all? No. That is certainly not how we're going to handle this, and you do not get to act like he is an idiot because you didn't teach him anything. You maniac. You know how some parents are super musical and you expect their kids to be musical geniuses and whoopsie doodle, they end up tone deaf? You, sonny boy, aren't just tone deaf. You don't even have the fucking holes where your ears should go. Jared felt the vodka hitting his centers of reason and knew that he felt outraged, but he wasn't even sure he fully believed his mom was a witch, so her telling him that he wasn't made his brain a wall of confusion. He took another swig. So Dad's a witch? Or a halite? She swished her vodka in the mug. At this point, the ape men who have been wandering around show up again, and start to like kind of wander around. And his mom is like, get out of here, and sort of waves her hand. And he's like, what? You can see them? And she's like, yeah, I didn't, like, they've been around and you've never been able to see them before. Now you can? And she says, fuckers keep coming back. Some spirits are like cockroaches. It's like having a zoo downstairs. And he says, they're spirits? Really? Of who? And she says, I don't even want to know where you and your freak picked them up. We should cleanse the house before your Nana gets here, or she'll be all up my ass about my housekeeping. So apparently, because she says, you haven't, I didn't think you could see them. You never have before, which made me think that these guys have been around. But then when she says, I don't know where you and the freak picked them up, it sounds like what she means is, in general, you never could see them before, like the spirits that are around, not these specific guys. Because these, she doesn't know like where they're from, but she is aware that something he did with Sarah brought them here. And she asks him about Sarah's fireflies, or no, he asks, do you see Sarah's fireflies? Do they ever talk to you? And when he's starting to talk about this, his mom's eyebrows just go up, and he decides to drop it because we're getting into such weird territory. I'm very curious if she does know what he's talking about, because she doesn't give him a straight answer here. And she starts to get out all of the stuff to do a cleanse. And there's this, I love this. He followed her upstairs to her bedroom, and she pulled a chest out of her closet. Jared had always assumed it was her ammo locker, because ammo was stenciled on the side. It was half full of Ziploc bags of stuff that looked herbal, but smelled more like hippie tea. Also, weird hippie stuff that you would find in a New Age store. Crap, she said, pulling out an abalone shell and an eagle feather. Go get the emergency candles in the kitchen pantry, all of them. I love this. You know, the abalone shell and eagle feather is definitely something that my mother has had on her altar when I was a kid. She probably still has a version of it. And he goes and gets all of this stuff. And as he's in the middle of it, he gets a call from Sarah, and she tells him that Gran's on the floor and she's not breathing, and he runs out of there. And I was so mad at him. It's so clear that this is a fucking ruse, dude. Like, you are in an emergency situation. Your mom is kind of freaking out and talking about cleansing the house. Don't leave the house, for the love of God. And the fact that he doesn't seem to be as paranoid as he should be after this thing wore Sarah's face. That really, like, I understand his mom's frustration a little more in that regard, I have to say. So he, runs out of there completely vulnerable, no shoes. Like, he's just, and he stops as he sees that none of the lights are on at the Jax's house. It seems like everybody's asleep. And somebody gets out of a car and clocks him on the back of the head. And when he wakes up, he is duct taped and in a cave full of bones. And he realizes Sarah would not have called him using the landline. She doesn't like being on the landline because she thinks that Gran listens in. So he should have known immediately. Never mind everything else that's been going on. He should have been suspicious. He is able to find a really sharp bone and get himself duct taped, and is trying to find his way out of the cave. Now, I was pleasantly surprised that he was able to get himself unduct taped that long. But then, as he's like skittering around on top of piles of bones trying to find his way out of this cave, he hears somebody say, little worm, tasty little bait, stick you on a hook, set you out to sea, wiggle you, jiggle you, bring some fish to me. So, they're talking about how they want to eat people who have power. They all pile on top of him, all start taking bites out of him, and at one point, one of them bites his toe off. And this one bites it off and keeps it. It doesn't eat it. And I don't like what that implies, because I feel like having a big piece of flesh, even in a lot of traditions, even just having somebody's blood is enough to fuck with things. But I imagine if you've got a whole toe, you could probably do some real damage. I don't care for this at all. And then fake Sarah fucking cauterizes the wound with a lighter. Brutal. Oh my God, it's horrifying. I can't, guys, I didn't expect this to go. I didn't think it was going to be this mean. And I should have, because even the people in his universe, in the world that he lives in, are terrible. But, this is just so drawn out, I guess. And we find out later, his mom says something about how she it's his Weegat dad who tells him they wanted to eat you the instant that they got you back to the cave, but your mom has protection spells on you, so they couldn't do it. So that's part of why it was drawn out, because I was kind of like, why don't they just eat him? What's going on? And it turns out that there's a really good reason for that. But at this point, I just really thought that this was going to end with them holding him hostage. And when they start to bite chunks of him off, I was not ready for it at all. How disappointing, fake Sarah said. We thought you had power. Power is tasty, said the otter with his blood on its mouth, smacking its lips. You taste... What are we tasting? Special needs magic, Jared stuttered. Fake Sarah snorted. Ha! Don't worry. You're still useful, little worm, even if you don't fill our bellies. Witches are so very tasty. Mom's terrified of you. She's going to run away. She won't come for me. So we should just eat you now? Fake Sarah said. Is that what you want, little worm? Jared shook his head. I can't stop you. How many witches are in your coven? Coven? No one's that dumb, fake Sarah said. How many toes do you want to lose? Mom is always alone. You lie. Witches are never alone. We see the witches next door. Where are the others? And he says at this point, Anthropocene. I'm going to look this up, because at the time when I read this, I was too eager to find out what happened and to see what their reaction was, that I didn't even... Okay. Anthropocene, relating to or denoting the current geological age, viewed as the period during which human activity has been the dominant influence on climate and the environment. Interesting. Okay, cool. So he says that, and fake Sarah nods and says the world is burning. Humans take all the fish, another one said. Can't stand the river, another spat. The rivers burn and taste like shit. Soon, the only thing left to eat, fake Sarah said, is you. I'm sorry, Jared said. We don't want you sorry, fake Sarah said. We want you dead. What kind of weaponry do you have? Jared asked. Guns, fake Sarah said. Well, yes, guns, bombs, grenades, intelligence. We're smart enough. No, intel, what do you know? Who your allies are? Are you going to free the factory animals? They'd probably like to get in on this. Fake Sarah frowned. You want us to free the chickens? Cows, pigs, I'm sure the turkeys aren't that happy. Their minds are gone. They're mindless. Are you sure? Her lip curled in distaste. We're not working with chickens. Isn't that, speciesism? Jared said. Are you lecturing us about looking down on animals? No, I'm just wondering if you have allies. So fake Sarah at this point basically is like, are you wearing a wire? And she says, take all his toes, take all his fingers. And the otters start to get really worked up. And then all of a sudden, they froze. And the torch freezes. And a drop of his blood is like hovering in the air. And it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly. Somebody has stopped time for a moment. He hears a voice in his head say, "Hello, son." And he is able to get free, gets out of this cave, and he goes outside. And here is his dad, so to speak, sitting as a raven up in a tree. And he says, "So you have been the voice in my head this entire time?" And he says, "Guilty as charged." And then his dad tries to say that he is here to help, and he will explain everything when we get away from here. And he basically, Jared is feeling really resentful of the fact that his father is feeling the need to step in and help now, when a couple of years ago, David was literally torturing him. And his father did not do jack shit to help. Now, on the one hand, maybe there's a reason his father couldn't help with that. On the other hand, I really understand Jared being super resentful of this. Because he says, "I've been watching you since your first act of magic. I don't do magic. You tell yourself it was a dream. When you shifted your consciousness out of phase with your body and went wandering around, helloing through dimensions." He saw himself holding Mrs. Jax's hand as they walked back to the house, toward the ambulance. In the distance, faintly, he heard David's ragged voice calling his name. He wanted the raven out of his head, now. So what this sounds like to me is that the raven, aka his father, only found out who he was after that incident because of the magic, drawing him somehow. So Jared is angry that his father didn't step in, but I maintain his father didn't know where to find him until his out-of-body experience that resulted from the beating itself. So I am going to give his dad the benefit of the doubt, maybe foolishly, in assuming he would have helped if he knew how. But unfortunately, he was not even aware of where his son was or who he was. I don't really know exactly how that would work, and maybe that's bullshit, and maybe he just means I wasn't watching over you as closely as I am now until your first act of magic, because you didn't really interest me until I knew how much you could do. And I kind of feel like that's what Jared hears, even though that's not necessarily what he says. So, like I said, I don't have enough details. And as much as I understand how resentful Jared is, and that basically he feels like this guy is swooping in for his own reasons and not telling Jared the truth about the situation, it frustrates me so bad that Jared does not attempt to shapeshift and get away, because I wanted him to fucking find out what is happening here. And nobody is giving him a straight answer. There's several chapters after this one that I read for this section, and there's very little detail going on in terms of exactly how he came to be, what he is, what he's capable of, what everybody else assumed he was capable of, what his mother is able to do. All of that is left completely out so far and being fed to us really slowly. And I was low-key hoping Jared would just go off with this Raven dad and find out the truth about himself and then sort of take it from there, you know, play it by ear from then on out and see what happened. But no, that is not. He just is so angry that he tells this guy to go fuck himself, basically. And his dad says, I'm trying to help, and this is the thanks I get. And at this point, I'm just like, dude, you're about to get eaten, though. So maybe just, like, prioritize getting the fuck out of here. And don't worry about the whole rest of this so much. But then Jared says, I would rather be eaten alive by river otters than to go anywhere with you. Which I was like, okay, wow, well, if that's how you feel, I don't get it. I don't agree with it. But I guess that explains why you don't have any sort of sense of urgency right now. And yeah, I wanted so much for him to just please find out what's going on. Not, the escape from river otters would certainly be helpful. Don't get me wrong. I really, respect that is the priority here. But more than anything, I want you to satisfy my own curiosity, please, guy. If you're cool with that. So he turns him down. Time starts again. All of these otters come pouring out of the cave. Time stops again for a moment. I can't keep us out of sync much longer, Jared. Think. Take a moment. You're angry. You don't know all the facts. I don't care. The river rushed. The air was cold. The otter people surrounded them, hissing. Oh, and I should mention, they're called otter people here because some of them have human faces or human arms, which is just the creepiest, and I hate it. Jared wished he'd had the presence of mind to at least pick up a rock. His mom had always told him that most of a fight was mental, and when you were outnumbered, the only rule was to fight dirty. Hit joints, knees, noses, and eyes. Fight down to the ground. Collaborator, fake Sarah said to Wiegert. Wiegert hopped around the ground, dragging his wing. He cawed and hopped on the car. The otters shoved Jared out of the way, intent on Wiegert, who screeched as otters swarmed the car. Jared fell and rolled, covering his head as he was trampled. When he looked up, the raven was gone, and the otters were milling around the hood of the car, trying to figure out which one of them was now Wiegert. They bit each other and clawed each other and fought each other to the ground. Run. Jared limped away down the logging road as the otters circled each other, shrieking. So at this point, the car shows up. It's his mom. I would like to register my shock and yet satisfaction at the fact that his mother has grenades that she throws at the river otters. Excuse me? You know, I'm expecting a circle of protection or, some kind of spell. Maybe there's herbs hanging from the doors of her truck as protection of some kind. Nope. Good old-fashioned grenades. Guys, I'm completely I'm so at sea. I don't know what's going on. Okay. So let's do chapter 36. He's in the hospital. He's having to tell people this crazy story. Went to take a piss, got my foot stuck in an otter's den, and then burnt it in the campfire trying to run away. Which I really need to know if anybody bought that story. It's one of those things where I'm on the one hand, it's just sounds nuts. But on the other hand, he is covered in otter bites, and I really don't know what else they'd think happened. So it is just such a weird situation. The explanation that he gives is no weirder than what actually happened. In fact, it's way less weird. So he starts talking to his mom while he's in the hospital about what the fuck is going on. And she's getting a little irate that he's just blurting out stuff about her killing a guy while they're surrounded by people who can overhear. But he is not really interested and just pushes the issue. Why did you try to kill him? Can we not talk about this with potential witnesses wandering up and down the hallway? You must have missed. I didn't miss. He's alive, ergo you did. Ergo? Ergo. Okay, Flyboy, shut up before I shut it for you. Did he say he was going to show you the world? Jared nodded. What did you tell him? To go fuck himself. She snorted. Good. So, I love this moment. The doctor was wearing a tux. Fancy, Jared said. My daughter's wedding reception. Thank you for getting me out of the endless toasts. That's really funny. You would think he'd just be so pissed. My daughter's getting married. But no, he's just like, oh, thank God, that was tedious. I hated it. 129 stitches, some burn treatment, and a prescription for antibiotics later, Jared was released. Richie popped a wheelie with his wheelchair in the parking lot, and they all laughed. Okay, are we getting like some sort of familial picture here all of a sudden? Richie's acting like a person. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. So Nana Sophia was in the basement when he gets there, and she is not looking great, and she obviously really rushed to get here. And the 8 men looked longingly at the ceiling. Nana held his arm over a bowl with a bunch of weeds in it and squeezed a little blood out of one of his bites. Nana lit the contents of the bowl. When she spoke words he couldn't understand, Jared saw something under her skin, something with a long, terrible beak. The smoke rose, and when it touched the ceiling, the drywall rippled like water. Jared watched the 8 men crawl up the smoke and disappear. Yo, that's pretty wild. So, at this point, his mom is asleep. Is it Sarah? Oh yeah, Sarah comes and visits him. Mrs. Jax is not doing super well, and neither is Mr. Jax, and hence her also not doing well. And he tries to tell Sarah about the fireflies that are still around her that are talking to him. And I find this really interesting because she was able to see them when she was on mushrooms, but now that she's sober, she can't anymore, but he still can. Yet he wasn't able to see them himself until she touched his eyes and said, I want you to see what I see. So it's obvious that whatever she did opened his eyes to being able to see, but I find it really interesting that see what I see only lasted, because obviously he's seeing something that she can't right now. So that lasted for the duration of the drug for her, but it continued on for him for some reason. It's like she opened something for him and isn't aware of it and has not managed to open it for herself, which I think would probably be kind of frustrating if I were her. And when he tries to explain to her what the fucking fireflies are saying, I got so annoyed because he is not saying to her verbatim what these things are saying to him. So if he did, I like to think that Sarah would understand a little bit better than he apparently does. Because they call him polymorphic, and he thinks that that means that they called him gay. Her mind shows signs of a unique quantum mechanical behavior, a capacity for super entanglement, if you will, far beyond normal carbon-based life forms. It's very exciting. I think they just called me gay, and they think you're tangled, but they like it. So he's trying to tell her this stuff, but she's just basically like, you are clearly high on something. And eventually, when he convinces her that he's not high, She then decides that he must be teasing her somehow, making fun of her. And she gets up and walks away. And he's just really like frustrated. So then comes the talk with Nana Sophia in the morning. And she starts off saying exactly what I'm thinking, which is, I didn't realize things had gotten so bad. I assumed your mother was still relatively stable. I love your loyalty, Jared, but you were nearly eaten yesterday. And forgive the judgment here, but your house looks like a crack den. I think it would be better if you stayed with me while you're healing. And he thinks to her, or he thinks to himself, if I just went with her, it would be so simple. She would take care of everything. I would never have to worry about money. I would never have to worry about being safe. I'd be able to travel and see the world. If he was willing to use her love to live the good life. Jared cleared his throat. Wiegert came to the Otters. He said you can't tell tricksters apart at the DNA level. Wiegert was here? He was. He watched her expression go cold. Her eyes lost their sparkle. Her wry smile disappeared. She let go of his hand and sat up straight. What else did he say? They lie, Jared said. Tricksters lie, right? What did he say? The thing under her skin raised its long, sharp beak and cried, Hawk! 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 In the distance, something answered in a voice as deep as a foghorn. Wop! Jared understood then why his mom called her Nana scary. Now that it was too late to take anything back, he wished he'd kept his mouth shut. The thing under her skin had wild eyes, and when they focused on him, he wanted to run. Jared's mom came into the kitchen and put her hand on Jared's shoulder. Sophia. Liar, Nana Sophia said. Phil knew, his mom said. I told him everything. He didn't believe me. But you married him anyway. My sister wanted my baby, said I was unfit. It was either marry Phil or lose Jared. It had nothing to do with you or your fucking blood money. Blood money? I want to know what that means, please. There is so much happening here, you guys. A red cloud came through the ceiling, thick and acrid. Jared hadn't thought anything could be worse than almost being eaten by otters, but he was wrong. Nana's eyes were wild and angry, and the thing inside her was becoming clearer. He'd never seen a bird like that before, like a pterodactyl with a long pointy beak and reptilian eyes. He'd been scared in the cave, but he didn't care about the otters the way he cared about Nana. It was so much worse when the person about to kill you was someone you loved. You guys, I hate this so much. I hate this. So he starts to be like, all right, then it's true, and apparently I'm not even fucking human. What am I? And his mother tries to tell him it's not the time, as Nana says, you're the son of Trickster and a whore. So we're not related? You're not Nana? Apparently not, Sophia said. All he seemed to be doing these days was crying. Why stop now, he thought, as he bent over and put his head on the table. He didn't care if Sophia killed him. She'd been his lifeline when things got dark. She'd been the one person who could make crap seem less crappy. And she hated him now. And he hated himself and his life. And he heard himself choking on his own snot. And he was disgusted, but he couldn't stop. After a long moment, she pulled her checkbook out of her purse and wrote a check. My son has been borrowing from you. He said he's keeping track so he can pay you back, but... She pushed the check across the table, and he knew then that in her head, their relationship was over. Please don't kill my mom, he said. Not one of my grandchildren has your wit, she said. So dull and grasping. But blood is blood. She stood, and he walked her to the door. They always hugged, but this time they didn't. She stayed there for a long time, staring back at him, and then she left. Y'all, this was the worst thing to happen yet in these books. Finding out that he had been tortured by some crazy fucking psychopath, his mom abandoning him, all of this shit, even getting captured by these fucking crazy ass weirdo otters. None of that is remotely as bad as this moment with Nana. Like, Nana has been the safety net. Nana has been the one thing that kept on, like, giving me the impression that he had somewhere to go and somebody that he can rely on. Obviously, he feels the exact same way. And she completely turns her back on him and douses any affection for him purely based on whether or not he is a blood relation. And that is cold-blooded. I just cannot with that. That is a rough thing to do. She is, when his mother called her a snob, you know, it's a hard thing for us to see on our end of things. Sure, she travels a lot and obviously has plenty of money, but those don't necessarily add up to somebody being a snob. But being able to cut this kid who clearly really needs you and who you didn't realize needed you so bad until you showed up and saw the state of the house he's living in, being willing to cut him out of your life completely because of that, that's fucking brutal. That is a ruthless move. I want this to be fixed, but there's no fixing it. Like, Nana is who she is, clearly. So he says, so Granny Nita was right. I'm a monster. No. You're a dumbass. A human dumbass. There'd be signs. You can't hide that shit. Not for long, anyway. Besides, if you were a trickster, you'd be powerful. And that just ain't our luck, is it? No, Jared said. It really isn't. So he goes, and he cashes that check, and he goes and brings it to his dad. Y'all, here goes something that I can't relate to at all. Why? Why would he do this? He says, Nana gave it to me, but I don't need it. Yes, you do. I understand not wanting to take her money, but like, your dad ripped you off. Let him pay her back through his mom. Like, just take, oh my God, dude, what are you doing? It's the principle of the thing. Fuck the principle of the thing. You couldn't buy groceries. Your mom flipped out and left you, and that's going to happen again, I bet. And you are going to need some fucking money. Just take it. Dude. You cannot afford to be prideful right now, Jared. Knock it off. Oh, I got so mad. And his dad basically is like, so, you figured out that your mom is crazy. Everything that she has told you, I need you to take with a grain of salt. She has all of these weird delusions going on, that there are like these mythical creatures after her and that she's got powers. And I love that Jared looks at him and thinks to himself how he misses being that clueless about everything. And I'm like, you still kind of are, Jared. Let's not lie to ourselves, shall we? You're a little bit clueless still. As he limped back to the bus stop, a part of his brain was working on a clever text to Nana Sophia, and another part of his brain was achingly aware that the last thing she wanted was to hear from him. No one liked being reminded that they'd been someone's sucker. Now listen, here's the thing. I get what he's saying, and he's not wrong, and that's definitely how she thinks about it. But his mother did not want Nana Sophia as part of his life. So she was, like, only she was only his mom's sucker by accident. And she wasn't Jared's sucker because he didn't know. So, in some ways, her insistence at staying involved in his life, despite his mother's protests, is kind of her own fault. She was so sure that he was special somehow, but also her blood, that she decided to cast aside the what's the word I want? The boundaries that his mother had created for a reason. She put them there because she knew how Nana would react. And Nana is this one who decided to just ignore them and do what she felt like. So, you were your own sucker, Nana. So, then we go into this weird moment again of like things being almost nice with family. His mom kept him home from school for a few days. She asked the tenants if one of them wanted to trade rooms, and then Richie helped move him back upstairs into his old room. Richie didn't grumble about it, and then left on his rounds. Jared climbed into his mom's bed. After she changed his dressings, they snuggled like he was 5. It was weird, but comfortable, except for the weirdness. "This is weird," Jared said. I kind of snorted at that moment when I was reading this. So she says something, "Stay close until the weasels are dead," and says that she cursed them. And he says, "I don't think swearing can actually kill anyone." Holy shit, Jared. Catch the fuck up, dude. Do you think that she meant cursing at them? No, she just told you that she's a witch. Will you fucking get with the program? Jesus, Mary, Mother of God. The evil eye, hexing, it's a talent. Actually, it's my only real magical talent. You can make a lot of money with curses, but you have to listen to a bunch of whiny, spineless douches too gutless to do the deed themselves. You get so sick of it you want to scream. Fucking buy a gun like normal people. Plus, the pitchfork crowd blames you for every little thing. My lawnmower won't start. My cat has hairballs. I didn't win at bingo. I love this so much. I love this. Like, as much as I am disgusted by his mom, she's weirdly likable, and I get kind of mad about it, to be honest. So she talks about how she killed the trickster. I blew his head off with a 30-aught, stuffed him in the trunk of his car, and pushed it into the ocean. You can't really kill tricksters, but you can put them out of commission while they pull themselves back together. I'll just have to bury him deeper next time. I don't think he's coming back. He'll be back. Jared had a few things he'd like to say to the guy, too. He couldn't imagine blowing anyone's head off, even if he knew they wouldn't really die, but he was perfectly willing to watch his mom give it the old college try. I want him to be willing to have a conversation with Wiegert. I get why he doesn't want to, but God, I want him to. I just ask some questions. Come on, please. So he goes over to the Jaxes a few days later, and the moving truck has come and taken a bunch of stuff away. And at this point, they try and eat something. And Mr. Jax starts flipping out, throws a bunch of stuff. Mrs. Jax begins to cry. It's just really upsetting, the whole thing. Them moving, the way he's deteriorating, how upset she is by it. And this part, Mr. Jax opened all the drawers, all the cupboards, and they were empty. He sat on the toilet looking lost and alone. Jared didn't know what to say to make it better. He didn't know what to do, except sit on the side of the tub beside him and wait until Mr. Jax was ready to go back to the living room. That's so rough. You know, he's like trying to find some familiarity, something to like ground him, and everything he's opening, it's all empty. That is just kind of symbolic, you know? Jared like trying to find some fucking normalcy in his life, and every drawer and cupboard he opens is empty. So Sarah is like, you know what? Since I'm moving and we don't know when we're going to get to see each other again, we should definitely have sex before I go. And he's like, okay, but keep in mind that I have been bitten all over my body. So this is going to have to be something really cautious. And they have sex very cautiously. And here goes the weird thing. Jared closed his eyes and heard music and hoped that Dawn wasn't coming home when they were so close. That's the song I've heard in my dreams, Sarah breathed. Jared's eyes snapped open, and above them the fireflies had formed a figure 8. The edges of Sarah were shredding and lifting, floating up as the fireflies came down. No, Jared said. He pulled away from her, and she reached up, her fingertips sparkling with tendrils of light. Her delight, her wonder, her glowing face. I thought you were delusional, Sarah said, or lying. Look at us. He was shredding too, bits of himself spiraling away from his skin, twining with bits of Sarah. Damn it. He willed the fireflies gone. He willed himself into one solid, normal human being. But he kept shredding, and the fireflies sparkled. Jared stumbled off the bed and pulled on his underwear. He pulled on his shirt, staggering, while Sarah ignored him, her face uplifted and serene. I'm going, Jared said. Sarah! She refused to move, so he went to the kitchen and filled a glass from the tap. The shredded tendrils sank back into his body. The glow of his skin faded. He went into the living room and sat on the couch. He heard the fireflies coming with her down the hallway, and he didn't want to see them. Come back, Sarah said. I can't hear them if you aren't there. No, Jared said. I've never felt anything like that. You're coming apart, Jared said. It's taking you apart. We're joining. No, you're shredding. I'm not scared. I am. Jared, come back to bed. No. A string of fireflies came at him like a strand of DNA. It wound around his head, and Jared ducked. They coiled tight and then sprang straight for his eye. I'm here, Sarah said. I'm right. And it cuts off. Think of magic as a tree. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I will say a longhouse high in the mountains with a smoke hole spewing terrible red smoke, acrid and sweet like burning flesh. I feel like that has something to do with Nana's cloud of red smoke that was above their heads in the kitchen. I am frightened of this longhouse. Does that have something to do with the ogre? Is that a thing? Or the cannibal? Are those all your memories? The fireflies said to him. So strange. You aren't quite human, are you? So, this was all a split second. Sarah's saying, I'm here, I'm right. And all of this like weird memory, a chief tree spirit peeking out from behind a cedar, forest dripping moss. And then he comes back and Sarah's there and barely any time has passed. And I cannot understand what is happening here. Like so much is happening at once and it's all so piled on top of each other and convoluted. And then I want to see what you see. Another Sarah came through the wall. The bone showed through half her face, while the rest of her skin was pocked with boils and pustules. I want to see too, the other Sarah said, lifting her hand and putting it on top of Sarah's. Her fingers were cold as they sank through Jared and past him. She flickered. The ghosts of the otter people crawled through the walls, crawled along the floor, following Jared as he pushed past Sarah toward the door. Yo, when he gets home, all of these ghosts follow him. And his mother smirks and says, I told you curses work. So what is that? Did she really kill them all with a curse? And these are their ghosts now? Is the Sarah, half her face was pocked with boils and pustules. The bone showed through the other half. Like, at first with the bone, I was thinking, oh, it was one of the grenades. But the boils and pustules, that wouldn't make sense. That has to be part of the curse. If she was able to kill all those river otters and fake Sarah, whom I think of as like head river otter, basically, that's pretty fucking impressive. That's huge. Like, damn, Mom. Beat it, his mom said to the otter people's ghosts when Sarah was out of sight. Before I exorcise the crap out of your ever-living souls. We owe you pain, fake Sarah said. Witch. See you in hell, his mom said. Bitch. When Richie came home, a grizzly as large as a VW bug followed him coming through the bedroom wall. Richie tried hard not to look annoyed and failed. The grizzly stopped and pawed the ground when it saw Jared swaying its great shaggy head back and forth, lowing. He can see it, Richie said. Is he a witch now too? No, but he's boning one. Man, Richie said, I wish I could see it. That's not fair. So, this is interesting because it says that Richie seemed irritated. So it's like he knows that it's there. I don't know if he can hear it or if there's some other sensing of it that he has, but apparently he can't see it. And I find it really interesting that he seems to be aware of it in some way, but can't set eyes on it. Also, how often does this shit happen? Because this bear following him home, like on top of everything else, and this bear feels utterly unrelated to what's going on in all. So it's almost like whatever's going on with Jared is like calling shit to him all over the place now, which feels very inconvenient. Like, I'd be pretty pissed if I were Jared, to be honest. Get some sleep, she said. He couldn't. His brain hummed, and he couldn't stop shaking. He couldn't close his eyes. He saw the longhouse, smelled the smoke, and felt dread deep, deep in his bones. Yo, maybe you should. That longhouse sounds like bad fucking news. Just saying. That night, his mom offered him a large white pill, and he shook his head. Jared didn't remember falling asleep, but he must have, because he woke and the bedroom was dark and he could hear two different kinds of sirens wailing down the street, a police car and an ambulance. In the distance, he could hear a fire truck. His mom lifted the bedroom curtain, lit by flickering red lights. I think it's your freak, his mom said. He struggled to get out of bed and stood beside her at the window in time to see the ambulance take off down the street. He moved to go downstairs, but his mom wrapped her arms around him, holding him still. I think you've done enough, she said. Let her be. And that's the end of that chapter. I'm curious about this. She doesn't say something happened to Mrs. Jax or Mr. Jax. Like, she says, I think it's your freak. Let her be. Did Sarah kill herself? I really hope not, because I feel like he has gone through so much in such a short time. And if she does something like this, I don't know what he's going to fucking do. He's going to implode. He's going to go find that cave and turn himself over. I guess he can't now because they're all dead. Holy shit, though. There is so much going on. I can't keep track of it. And the fact that nobody has still really told him what's going on. Like, his mom tells him about killing Ouija and how he can put himself back together again and will be back. But she keeps insisting that he's human, and there's clearly something non-human about him that she doesn't seem to want to address. Or maybe she simply doesn't know about it. I don't think he's told her about, like, wandering off on the spirit plane to Mrs. Jax's house. I want him to talk to her about that, though, so that she can start to get the picture that there's something going on here that she's not aware of. Okay? Guys, I'm just really, like, I'm anxious. I want to know what's happening. And all it is a bunch of inexplicable shit piled on top of each other. and he has no room to breathe and is getting hurt left and right, and still no explanations of anything. And it makes me very upset. And what happened with Nana is the worst. The worst. And I am so bummed about it. Oh, you guys. I feel so bad. I wish he hadn't said anything to her. I really do. He could have just left. I mean, maybe it would have been better for him to not be close to somebody who's going to turn out to be that ruthless, but I feel like it could have done him some good for a little while, you know? You guys, I'm so sad. All right, well, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm out of time. But thank you, Robin, for commissioning this, even though I kind of hate you for making me upset. But what are you going to do? It happens. And I hope you guys are enjoying the coverage. And I will be seeing you again soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.